Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, the podcast where we dive into the business side of running a law firm. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services for law firms, and each week we talk with industry experts who help law firm leaders think differently about growth, profitability, and performance so they can build practices that last. Today we welcome Alex Weatherby, and Alex is a personal injury attorney with Weatherby Law Firm based in Atlanta, Georgia, a couple of offices there. He focuses on personal injury matters and complex litigation. Alex is known for his strategic approach and strong client advisory. Alex works closely with individuals navigating difficult legal situations, helping them understand their options and pursue meaningful outcomes. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's nice to see you.
Hey, Alex, I love to hear people's origin stories. Tell me how you became a PI lawyer, but take me back to the first time when you wanted to be a lawyer, and how did you get where you are today?
Yeah. So, way back at the beginning, I'm Georgia born and raised. So I'm from the Atlanta area, unlike a lot of folks. I'm actually a first generation college graduate, first lawyer in my family.
Wow.
And so I'm a little bit different than other law firms or lawyers that you'll see where, perhaps their dad did it and their kids did it. I kind of hope to be one of those one day with my kids following my footsteps, but I did something a little different than my father. My dad is a plumbing contractor in the Atlanta area. So I grew up sort of digging ditches with him and going out. We did new construction residential work. And as I was growing up, I kind of, wanted to have a license to help people, kind of like my dad had a plumbing license to help people. But I sort of wanted to do it outside of the construction world, which was kind of the historical way that my family had done. And so I went to college at Samford University and did well there. And so I decided to go to UGA for law school and become a lawyer. So I did that without really knowing many lawyers. Definitely didn't know any judges or anything like that. But I knew that, I wanted to have a unique set of knowledge and skill set like my father had so that I could help people when they needed help.
That was great training for him to put you to work in the family business. And I guess you knew you could go there if you needed to, but it also taught you what you didn't want to do the rest of your life. You wanted to help people, but not in a physical manner way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really liked it. It also, I think, had a little bit to do about the time that I was coming out of school was 2007, 2008. And so the financial crisis had kind of started brewing. And so, at that time, residential construction just dropped. And that was a really difficult time for our family, and also not a very good time for me to enter into that kind of a business. So it worked out nicely because I was able to take those lessons into the practice of law, even though they were a little different.
We certainly rebounded from that, but it didn't seem like it at the time when all the banks seized up and were failing left and right.
Right. Yeah. My goal actually coming out of law school was I wanted to go work for a big firm at kind of one of the big towers, sort of like what you see behind you at your pretty office there. And that was my goal. I wanted to go, help big businesses essentially defend themselves. And a lot of those dried up at the time. And so what ended up happening is instead of going downtown and working for a large firm, I ended up moving back in with my folks. It was a little bit of a depressing experience, to go to law school. Here I am, first generation college grad and, first lawyer in my family. And I, land a big job of nothing and move back in with my folks. And so I ended up just applying for all kinds of things. Where can I help? At that point, I just wanted to work. And it ended up working out great because I went to work for a gentleman named Emery Palmer, who's a great, smart man, and he's now a judge. And he defended lawyers who got sued.
Oh,
And so
wow.
my first job was defending lawyers in malpractice cases. And that was kind of booming at the time because real estate attorneys were getting sued, business attorneys were getting sued. And it was the perfect pathway to what I do now. I learned how to practice law the right way. I learned that you need to communicate with your clients and tell them hard truths. And I learned that sometimes you have to go to court and fight for what's right. And so that's sort of what I do now, helping injured folks.
So from there, you started your firm to do PI work?
So what happened after that, I worked with Emery for about 4 or 5 years. And then he ran for judge, and he's now a judge in the Coweta Circuit, the Superior Court down in Newnan. And at the time, I was all depressed because he was my buddy and, had really my mentor and had taught me everything that I knew. And he had a law partner that he worked with named Pitts Carr. And he told Pitts that he should keep me on. And so Pitts did keep me on. And so my practice shifted, and it's how I got the training to be a personal injury lawyer. So what we did with Pitts is we defended some large companies like Pepsi, family of companies. We defended trucking companies in personal injury cases. And then we did some high-end plaintiffs work, so some catastrophically injured folks, things like that. So we kind of did both sides. So now I use that in the practice of law because I just help injured folks, but I can tell them, hey, this is what's they're doing on the other side. This is how you get them to change their view of the case.
Yeah, that defense side has to be invaluable because you know how they're going to react.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It does help. And what it also humanizes them, because that a lot of times these adjusters are working with hundreds of files and they're trying to push the paper in the right way and that kind of thing. And so how to talk to them and give them the information they need to raise their reserves on a case and put the money on there that needs to be there. So I think it's beneficial, for the client for a number of reasons.
So you do motor vehicle accidents, truck accidents, wrongful death. What, in your case inventory, how do you handle case management? What system do you use?
So I'm all about systems. There's a book by a well-known medical malpractice lawyer out of New York. His name's escaping me now, but it's basically how to build the personal injury law firm of your dreams. And the whole thing is based on systems. So we have systems from the very beginning inception of the case that runs all the way through a trial. And they used to be on paper, literally. And so you would check them off, or go in, you would download the piece of paper onto your Microsoft file, and you would go in and write an X to it. Now we've got that integrated into our case management system, which is Filevine. And so there's task flows that are built in, forms that are there, the things that you used to copy and paste. Now you press a button and it does it for you. But it's still systematized to make sure that each of those steps along the way, we're talking to the clients enough, we're sending the right letters, we're asking the right questions.
I love Filevine because it is this database that's so open that you can customize it to do what you just said. And then we also use it for the clients we have that use Filevine to forecast in a contingent environment, because from intake to adjudication or settlement, there are certain milestones, and MVAs are very similar. Truck accidents very similar. Med mal similar. Not similar to each other, but similar by type. And you can hit those milestones and predict not only just the value of a case, but when that cash might come out of IOLTA and into general and make the settlement. So Filevine has been a great open source code to build a forecast. Do you do any forecasting with Filevine?
We do. So we build what I call a work in progress report. It's essentially a monthly accounts receivable for like a standard type business like my dad's. This is how much you got coming out. That's what's going to come in. But ours is based on essentially 12 quarters, and you forecast out when's the money going to hit and what do you think it's going to be. And so we use that essentially to forecast, hey, over the next year, over the next 2 years, this is how much money we think the firm's going to have. These are the sorts of investment decisions we can make to help more people.
I think that's great. And it probably helps you sleep at night knowing that, you can see when there's a dip in cash and you can pull some levers to make things different in the near future.
Yeah, I had and I have a business coach named Art Italo. He's been a business coach here in the Atlanta area for lawyers specifically for about 30 years. And I can remember when he first brought that up to me. I mean, I had been running my firm for like a year without anything like that. And so I really felt like I had no accounts receivable, which was not the way to really think about it. But in a personal injury firm, it is different because it's not like you've submitted an invoice and you're expecting to be paid. You really have to take the case and look at the facts and project what you think it's going to resolve for in the future. But that information is important so that you know how much you can spend on personnel, if you need a line of credit, that kind of stuff.
Well, and not only that, it's important just to know what the value of your inventory of cases is, because unlike many firms, an hourly billing firm, there's not a whole lot of value there, but a PI firm has real value, because if you decided that tomorrow you wanted to go to the beach and never do this again, someone would pay you for this inventory of cases and the goodwill that your name is in bringing in new cases. And unless you know what the value of that inventory is, you can't really judge whether or not it's fair value.
Right.
Do you, when we look at AI, there are two camps of attorneys. One thinks it's the death of the profession, and the other seems to be embracing it. So where do you fall in those two camps? And if you like AI, are you utilizing it in your practice, and how?
So I think that AI is a fact of life, and I've never seen much success with folks trying to buck technology. There's always been professions that had to change based on technological advances. I mean, even like going back to the plumbing business, when we were growing up, we used to use copper pipes, and you would solder each of them. That's like how you would solder the joints. And copper is supposed to be good for your water, it's supposed to be a naturally cleaning material. Now they use PEX, essentially just plastic tubing. So you have to change, whether it's a hard material like that or something that's more like an algorithm-based thing like AI. So we use AI in our practice. We utilize it to help us do some research, to help us do some writing, some document review, and things like that. I've explored a lot of different AI tools out there. So I've looked at sort of the free ones or the freemium ones that you don't just have to pay a little bit, like Claude and ChatGPT and things like that. Right now, we've just recently started with Eve, which is you may be aware, but maybe your audience isn't. It's a legal-based AI solution that essentially is closed, so it doesn't go outside the world, but you can build your own library of cases and resources, build your own pleadings, things like that in there, so it can help you generate things faster and more efficiently. So I'm not sure if I like it or not in that sense, but I do think that it's a necessary thing that law firms have to adapt with.
I love that approach. It is necessary. And I think the realization that it's changing. So every 3 months, there's going to be a different product or an evolution of what we currently have. And we just have to stay on the front edge of that. I don't want to be the beta tester, but I want to be right behind that person in the process. We're looking at AI solutions to handle a lot of the mundane, routine, repetitive entries that happen in the bookkeeping world. And it's not that we do want to get more efficient, but not to create more profit. We want to spend more time on the analysis, the human analysis, so that we can provide a better solution.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with one of my dear friends actually today, who is a defense lawyer, and we were talking about how AI is going to change that model. And I really think it's actually going to change the defense bar and the hourly attorney more than it'll even change the plaintiff's attorney. The reason why is insurance companies are, obsessed with cutting costs. I can remember when I was defending them, they would come up with all kinds of wackadoo rules, like you can't research something more than 5 hours before prior approval. And that sounds like, oh my gosh, 5 hours. I mean, when you're dealing with complex legal issues, it should be 50 hours. And I can see, though, those rules becoming even more sharp as this analysis can happen quicker with AI. How they might expect you not to spend more than a couple hours on a brief, things like that. And a brief, a good one can take 40, 60, 80 hours. Reviewing medical records when I was on the defense side was something that I relished, because that will be 30, 40 hours. And also you can find some really good nuggets in there, but that's a lot of billable time. Now, literally with Eve, I'd create medical flows and timelines in 10, 15 minutes from thousands of pages.
You're so right. There's a defense firm here in St. Louis that I've worked with, and the insurance companies that they work for say that letters should take 6 minutes. And then they look at their rate and they go, we're not paying that rate. We're going to pay something less than that rate. So there really is a lot of fee compression on the defense side, and AI is only going to increase that.
Yeah, I had a friend who was telling me, this is a defense lawyer, that along with the bills, the insurance companies want you to submit the AI tokens that you've used on their files, because they want you to use it. They want to see with a brief that you've used this or that, or with a report you asked it to formulate things. So that's going to be interesting. And I don't know exactly how that's going to shake out for the hourly folks, if it'll become more flat fee or something like that. I'm not naive to how it could affect plaintiffs as well. Like you could have plaintiffs firms that just become kind of even more of a mill, that's out there. They're just churning things with a bunch of people using AI. So that could happen and make it more competitive. But I think if there will still be room for a law firm like ourselves that takes a select number of cases, works on building them up, and maximizes the value of those cases, utilizing tools like AI where it makes sense.
There is a lot of competition in what you do. You've got the big behemoths, Morgan & Morgan, who seem to be everywhere now, and size matters according to them. So how do you, or do you choose not to compete, but how do you compete with them, and how does your firm attract work?
Yeah, those are very good questions. So when, as I'm sure whenever you're coming up with like a market analysis to try to decide where you're going to put your resources, I don't consider Morgan & Morgan a direct competitor in that sense, because they are doing things that I would never do. I don't have the resources to be on TV all the time and radio and have the billboards and all of that, nor does it really suit what I want to do. In the same way, they don't do what we do very well, which is be in the community, develop relationships with people, answer the phone when they call, let you speak to your attorney, have consistency of staff, things like that. So, when I'm selling our services, I essentially do it like perhaps you do, which is, hey, we communicate, we work hard, you know who you're working for, we get the most value. And there's a lot of people who want that. And I actually get a lot of clients from Morgan & Morgan for people who have tried it out, not to disparage Morgan & Morgan, but have tried it out and it hadn't been for them because perhaps they haven't talked to their attorney as much as they'd like.
There is a huge difference between you and the bigger firms. And there's a lot to be said for when a client calls that if you don't pick up the phone right away, you call them back the same day so that they know that they can talk to their attorney or somebody on their team that can help.
Correct. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I mean, don't get me wrong. We always call, at least with my firms, we always call John Morgan the GOAT. I mean, I think that he is really incredible, and he's written several books on the practice of law, and he grew that firm from himself to what it is.
It's been an incredible story and journey.
It's very impressive. He's a very impressive man. But at this point, he's offering something different than we are. He's offering sort of a large corporate experience, and we're offering a local hometown service.
So let's go back to when you first started your firm. Two questions. One, what would you do differently that if you had to do it over again? And what worried you the most when you started?
So I'll start with the second one first. I started my law firm during COVID. So at the time, I was very nervous about having cases at all. The court systems had dried up. There wasn't very many people going out and about, and I do a lot of injury cases, so people interacting with other people are generally where that happens. And so I was nervous about having enough work. If I had to go back to the beginning and do it again, I would say getting advice from my business coach was probably the best thing that I did. And doing that earlier would be a good idea. It's hard to run a business and practice a profession at the same time. And there are some things that if you don't have an MBA, you just don't know that you need to do this. And so that was kind of invaluable for me. It's hard to know if I could have done it sooner because, I mean, I didn't have much of a business when I started. So you have to develop some kind of accounts receivable and things like that to be able to talk about it. But it was great once I started it.
Being open to a business coach and being coachable, I think has probably led to a lot of your success, and I applaud you for that. So before we wrap up, I want to get into something that's off topic a little bit. You went to UGA for law school, correct?
That's right, yes.
And you're a Dogs football fan?
Yep, I grew up in Atlanta, so we are a Dogs family.
So what do you think they're going to do this year, and who's going to win the SEC?
It's so interesting with the world of NIL, isn't it? I mean, it's just changed everything. And I read a lot of the UGA sports blogs. And it's interesting because there'll be so many new names that end up popping up that you don't recognize from last year. And so I'm curious to see, Georgia doesn't have one of the biggest NIL budgets. And you hear Kirby out there talking about, hey, we want people that want to be here to be a Georgia Bulldog. And maybe that sells. I hope it does. But I think a lot of people are interested in the money too. I think we've got a good shot this year because, we brought back our quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, who's an excellent leader, and he's now experienced. So I think we've got a good shot. Our running backs are supposed to be like 4 or 5 deep. So we should have a pretty strong offensive showing. And then Kirby's always good on defense. So I can't not pick my alma mater. So I'm going to pick them to win the SEC.
You're so right about NIL. And if Kirby continues to think that people are going to come because it's Georgia, they will. But at some point, you get to be Dabo Swinney and you get passed by.
Yeah, I wonder what is happening there because I think Kirby's always been somebody who wants to spend money. I mean, when he came here, he got Georgia to do things that Mark Richt had been begging for, like with extra coaching staffs, paying people more, getting bigger practice facilities. So he's not afraid to spend money. So I wonder if the appetite just hasn't been there because they don't see the need yet. And so you need to build that versus like when you look at a place like that had never tasted success before, like Indiana or somebody like that, you can get a Mark Cuban really fired up to go out and spend some money. So it might take a few seasons for people to realize you got to spend some money.
I love NIL and the transfer portal. I do wish there were some guardrails on it. Maybe, as an 18-year-old kid, you can transfer once unless your coach gets fired or leaves, and you can transfer again. But this free agency that we have, you don't really have a chance to build something. Now, that's something Indiana really had. They had an older roster that had been together for a long time. And, of course, they have that autistic coach, Signetti, who I can't stand, but, he won. And if just Google him, he wins everywhere.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, he's a pretty impressive human. I agree. I mean, I think this is a prime example of us needing the U.S. Congress to do something. They need to do something here because right now it's the Wild West. And so I think you need some type of regulation. And the NCAA has proven that they're not able to do it. They've been sued. It's now an antitrust violation. They can't do it.
Right.
So I think we need Congress to step in. I'm not smart enough to know what in the world they need to say, but obviously what we have now is not good, even for the student athletes, because you hear these horror stories you read online, like people sign up for an NIL deal, they get there, there's no money, and it was by some, conglomerate of groups of people that are an LLC shell company, and now there's no money there to be had, and you've wasted a year. So I think for everyone, it's good for the players to get their money, but it needs to be in some type of guaranteed format that comes with assurances on both sides.
Well, it's been an exciting time in NCAA athletics. Hey, Alex, this has been great. So if folks want to get a hold of you or your firm, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, I try to make myself easy to find. So you can just Google Alex Weatherby. I'm generally the number one spot. You can go to weatherbylawfirm.com, or you can search me on basically any type of social media, YouTube, Facebook, all of that stuff. We're Weatherby Law Firm on all of those.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in to Judicial Dollars and Cents. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure and like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps us grow and ensures you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.